In the heart of the rural village of Thatchuyen, cradled by the slow-moving Tamlin River, strange things had begun to stir. The villagers, a close-knit community with simple lives, believed in balance between man and spirit, light and shadow. Superstition was not entertainment here. It was survival. That evening, as the golden dusk bled into the deep purples of night, a faint, eerie song floated on the breeze. A voice like broken wind chimes, someone whispered later. At the house of Mr. Nin, one of the elder farmers in the village, the men were sitting in his open bamboo veranda drinking rice wine after a long day on the fields. Children played under the coconut palms. Even the dogs were quiet until that song rose. Mr. Nin's son, too, stopped scrolling on his phone. Everyone froze. The song came from the road by the river. The tone was not melodic. It twisted. It warped. It spoke in tongues no one knew. And then came the laughter, light at first, like a giggle, but then louder and louder until it turned manic. Out of the mist that hung near the river banks came a silhouette. Thin, stooped, moving like an insect. It was a woman, hair disheveled, clothes soaked in filth. Her eyes gleamed like wet coal. Someone gasped. It's my Duyen." The laughter died down to a low murmur. Some of the younger children screamed and ran behind their fathers. "My Duyen." That name once belonged to a beautiful woman from the highlands near the border. But now, she was something else. 6 months ago, she'd descended into madness. She wandered, barefoot and shrieking, talking to things no one else could see. Once upon a time, she had rescued a man, Ben, a traveler robbed and nearly beaten to death in her village. She nursed him, fell in love, and when her affection wasn't returned, she turned to a forbidden solution, a love talisman. The talisman worked, Ben became hers. Mind, body, soul. For decades they lived together, had 2 sons. But talismans are not eternal. When the magic faded, Ben saw the world again and realized he had been trapped in a nightmare. Hatred replaced love. And worse, Mai Duyen's mind unraveled. Her soul fragmented. She began roaming at night, muttering names that didn't exist, holding imaginary children in her arms, warning trees about invisible demons. And Ben, burdened with shame, began beating her. It was a night like this, weeks ago, when she disappeared. No one had seen her since. Until now. She spun in circles with a broken broom, chanting some forgotten lullaby. Ben arrived moments later, furious and breathless. "Get back home," he shouted. "You're shaming us." He dragged her by the wrist, then beat her again. Nobody dared intervene until finally, Mr. Nin and some men approached and pulled him away. "Enough," one yelled. "She's not even herself anymore." Reluctantly, Ben stopped. He dragged her away, muttering curses under his breath. That night, no one in the village slept easily. 3 days later, Mai Duyen's shoes were found by the riverbank. Her body was discovered over 2 kilometers downstream, bloated, missing an eye, the stench unbearable. But the most disturbing part: her ankles bore black handprints, slick with some slimy, translucent goo that no soap could remove. The local death handler, old Uncle Kai, had never seen anything like it in his 40 years of laying the dead to rest. He said nothing to the villagers, not yet. But a terrible thought grew in his mind. This wasn't natural. During the cremation, some whispered that she deserved it. Play with talismans, get burned, they said. But Uncle Kai knew better. Something pulled her down. Something helped her husband kill her. Something hungry. And something that wasn't done yet. A week later, tragedy returned. A teenager named Dung, known for his cheeky jokes and love of mobile games, went to bathe in the river with his friend Long. They were loud, teasing each other, splashing like any other hot afternoon. But then Long heard a scream. He turned to see Dung flailing, not like someone swimming but like something was pulling him down. His legs didn't kick. His body didn't float. Long jumped in, tried to grab his friend, but Dung was heavy, unnaturally heavy. As if tied to a rock. He shouted. Cried. Then, he let go. The entire village joined the search. Dung's mother collapsed in grief. His father dove into the river repeatedly, ignoring cramps and exhaustion. But it wasn't until 2 days later that the body floated up. Right where Mai Duyen's was found. And again those marks. The same handprints. The same slime. Uncle Kai was now certain. Something was living in the river. Something with intention. And it had tasted death. By the time the toddler Koa was found face down in the shallow backyard pond of his own home, barely submerged yet unmistakably drowned, the villagers could no longer deny it. 3 deaths in under 3 weeks. The whisper began to spread. There's a river demon in Thatchuyen. Uncle Kai, trembling with fear but resolved, called for a meeting in the old temple. All candles were lit, incense smoke curling like pleading fingers to the heavens. This isn't mere misfortune, he said. I have seen it. The prints. The ooze. The pain etched into their bodies. This is a curse. A river ghost. A drowned spirit, perhaps something older. The room went silent. Outside, the wind howled down the river path. Inside, plans were made. A name was mentioned. Find Master Thay Hai. He was a reclusive spiritual warrior known for battling shadow spirits, exorcising forest wraiths, and sealing lake demons. Some said he lived deep in the forest of Truklin, others that he had vanished into the mountains long ago. but if anyone could face what was in the river, it was him. And thus began the true battle for the soul of Thatchu Yen. The search for Master Thay Hai had begun. Early the next morning, Uncle Kai and Mr. Ben's brother-in-law, Lam, took a motorbike across rice fields and red dirt paths toward the forested region of Truc Lin, where it was rumored that the old exorcist still resided. Lam, though skeptical, knew too well the smell of death. His own nephew had nearly drowned 2 years ago, claiming that a cold hand pulled at his leg right in that same river bend. After hours of asking locals, they found a quiet stilt house hidden among bamboo and starfruit trees. A figure sat cross-legged in the shade, wearing a plain brown robe and sipping bitter tea with a calmness that unnerved even the bravest men. He raised a hand before they could speak. "I know why you've come," he said without opening his eyes. "And I felt it days ago. Something old has awakened." Thay Hai wasn't what Lam expected. He didn't carry talismans or amulets like a fortune teller. Instead, he wore around his neck a pendant made of blackened bone, and on his back was a wrapped iron staff engraved with incantations in a forgotten script. "But Master," Lam began, "we've lost 3 people already. The villagers, my family, we're terrified. Will you come?" Thay Hai looked up. His eyes were not human. They were gray, like fog, ancient and distant. "I will. But first, I need to visit the water." Back in Thatchu Yen, the fear had fermented into superstition. Children were forbidden to go near the river. Women left offerings at crossroads. A monk was invited to chant sutras over the village well. Still, every night a child's voice echoed across the bamboo groves. "Mama, it's cold." The voice matched the toddler Koa's. His mother had gone mad, now wandering the garden at night calling her son back, leaving food on the pond's edge. Then the dreams began. People dreamed of dark water, of bloated hands clawing from beneath, of glowing eyes in the reeds, watching from beneath the moon. Even two, who had once laughed at superstition, now kept a knife of sacred ash under his pillow. On the 3rd night, lightning cracked the sky as Thay Hai arrived. He walked alone into the village at dusk, his presence followed by wind and dead leaves. He didn't introduce himself. He simply said, "Bring me to the river." The villagers gathered behind him in silence. At the bend of the Tam Lin River, the same spot where both Mai Tu Yen and Dung had been found, Thay Hai stood still. Then he spoke. "It isn't just a ghost. This is a book Lin." A silence heavier than stone fell. "A book Lin," he explained, "is a spirit born not of one death, but many. It forms when pain festers, when injustice grows roots, when a soul dies in torment, and is forgotten. It doesn't haunt. It hungers." As he spoke, the river began to stir. Small bubbles rose, then more, forming a line of path from the deep center toward the bank. They knelt and dipped a ringed finger into the water. The reaction was instant. A horrid screech tore through the air. The water exploded upward. Something massive and dark slammed against the surface before vanishing back into the depths. Villagers screamed. Even the brave dogs howled and fled. But they remained calm. "It knows I'm here now," he said. "It will not wait." That night, he stayed in Uncle Kai's house. He drew runes in chicken blood around the house, sealed the doors with rice ash, and scattered dry jasmine under the beds. "It might come for me," he warned. "Do not interfere. And no matter what you hear, do not open the door." The villagers obeyed. And then, at midnight, the screams began. They were not Dai's. They were hers. Mai Duyen's voice wailed across the yard, echoing with rage. "Benoi! Let me in. I'm cold." Her laughter was wet. Broken. Then the banging came. Thud. 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 Hence dozens of them pounded against the sealed doors, scraping, clawing, slamming. From within, Uncle Kai sat trembling, holding his rosary tight, tears streaming down his face. And then, silence. A new voice whispered. A man's voice. "You left me to die in the reeds." Suddenly, the doors pulsed like lungs. The runes glowed blood red. A pressure filled the house like the river itself had risen inside the walls. Then everything stopped. Morning came. When they opened the door, Dai was already outside, gazing toward the river. "It brought friends," he said. "But it couldn't enter. Not yet. It's building something. A nest. A soul trap. If it completes the ritual, it won't just haunt your river. It will be strong enough to reach your homes, your children, even in daylight." He turned to the elders. "I need time. 3 nights. You must hold the village together until then." They nodded. But not all was well. At the edge of the group stood Mr. Ben. Sweating. Pale. Dai narrowed his eyes. "You," he said. "You smell of blood guilt." And Mr. Ben did not answer. Not yet. But soon, his secret would come to light. It rained the next day in Thatchuyen. Not a heavy downpour, but a slow, whispering drizzle like the sky wept in warning. The elders said it was spirit rain, a sign that the dead were stirring beneath the veil. No birds sang. The river was silent. Hai stood at the edge of the Tam Lin River, barefoot, his iron staff planted into the mud. He had spent the morning drawing a binding sigil the size of a house, etched with lime powder and ash from 3 different funeral pyres. When 2 approached him with offerings of tea and sticky rice, the old exorcist did not move. "The river watches," he said softly. "And now, so does the earth." 2 didn't ask what that meant. Some things were better left unspoken. But whispers had begun to swell through the village. Everyone was talking about Mr. Ben. It started with children, whose innocence made them especially sensitive. They said he smelled like dead water. His shadow moved without him. One boy claimed to see a woman crying in his doorway at night. His own sons Koi and Trong had been avoiding him. And ever since Hai's accusation, he had not been seen near the river. He stayed indoors, curtains drawn, eyes haunted. But the truth has a way of surfacing, just like corpses. That night, as the rain continued to fall, the dreams returned. This time, almost half the villagers reported the same nightmare. A woman with empty eye sockets, her arms covered in bruises, standing waist deep in the river, whispering, "You let him kill me." In the dream, she held her stomach like a pregnant mother. And behind her, shadows shifted shapes with broken limbs, crawling on all fours, whispering names only the dreamer would recognize. When the villagers awoke, their mirrors were fogged. Some found muddy footprints in their homes. One woman, elderly and nearly blind, claimed she felt a cold hand on her face in the night, brushing her cheeks like a mother mourning her child. The next morning, Uncle Kai could take no more. He called a village meeting. "It's time we stop pretending," he said. "We've all seen the signs. It's not just the river. It's inside our homes now. There is a darkness nesting beneath our feet. A spirit that feeds on guilt." Hai stood beside him, eyes closed. Then, slowly, he pointed. "Mr. Ben. Step forward." The crowd parted. Ben did not move. His face was gaunt. His fingernails were blackened at the tips. His voice was barely audible. She wouldn't stop screaming. She kept looking at me like she knew I hated her. I didn't mean to kill her. But that night, she bit me. Drew blood. And I snapped. Gasps rippled through the crowd. "I pushed her into the river," he whispered. "She hit her head on a stone. She fell. I walked away. Then I heard something. A splash that wasn't hers. Something else was waiting in that water." Hai didn't blink. "You didn't just kill your wife," he said. "You fed the book Lin. You gave it a seed. The silence was thunderous. Then came a sound. A cry. From the river. Not human. Not animal. Something ancient. A wail like a baby drowning. It echoed through the trees. The ground trembled. The spirit nest had awakened. That night, the fog descended. Thay had warned the villagers to stay indoors and light no fires. But fog crept in through every crack. It carried sobs, laughter, and worst of all, familiar voices. Old lovers. Dead children. Forgotten friends. Each whisper was tailored to the listener, designed to pull them outside. Tu almost opened the door when he heard his grandmother's lullaby. She'd died 5 years ago. His hands trembled on the latch. But then, he heard Thay's voice outside. Do not open the door. What waits for you? Where's her voice? It took every ounce of Tu's will to step away. Others weren't so lucky. The next morning, 4 homes were empty. Doors wide open. Bedding still warm. But no trace of the people. Only footprints leading toward the river and stopping midstream. The spirit nest had fed again. Thay called for a ritual. Not just a summoning. A severance. We must confront the Booklin before the full moon, he said. After that, it will be strong enough to breach holy ground. He explained that the spirit had woven a nest of soul strands beneath the riverbed, binding memories, guilt, and lingering pain into a web no living person could escape from once caught. To confront it, he would need the bones of the first victim, Mai Duyen. The blood of the one who fed it, Ben. And the breath of the living who've dreamed of it, half the village. Uncle Kai, Tu, Koi, Trong, and the grieving mother of Dung all agreed to participate. Even Ben, broken and hollow-eyed, offered his arm when Thay asked for blood. I deserve worse, he muttered. It's not about punishment, Thay said. It's about redemption. At midnight, the ritual began. Near the riverbank, under a canopy of ghost lanterns, Thay drew a massive circle with bones, salt, and sacred leaves. He chanted in a language no one had heard before, older than Vietnamese, older than time. The circle lit up. A chill passed through every spine. And then, from the river, it rose. The Booklin. No longer a mere spirit. Now a form, part woman, part serpent, part smoke. Its face was Mai Duyen's, but stretched, hollow, and wrong. Her mouth never closed. Her arms dragged behind her like leeches. And behind her, the faces of Dung, Koa, and others. Twisted. Fused. Screaming. Return what is not yours, Thay commanded. You owe a debt. The Booklin screamed. The circle flared. The battle had begun. The river ride. As Thehai's ritual circle pulsed with sacred fire, the Vuklin rose like a god of the drowned towering above the trees, her body a flowing nightmare of bones, mud, hair, and sorrow. Her face still bore the features of Mai Tuyen, but distorted, stretched thin across a skull too wide for any human form. "You came too late, Thehai," she hissed, her voice layered with dozens more. "The river is mine now." Her body spiraled with the faces of the dead Dung's twisted smile, Koa's frozen scream, and even Ben's unborn daughter, who had died in Mai Tuyen's womb. They spun around her like a carousel of torment. The air snapped cold. Bamboo cracked under invisible pressure. The villagers watching from the tree lean collapsed to their knees. Some wept. Some screamed. But Thehai stood firm. He planted his iron staff into the ground. The circle erupted in red light. "I do not fear you," he said calmly. "I pity you." The Vuklin screamed, and the sound cracked every lantern nearby. The wind howled. Trees bent sideways. From the river, shadowy arms shot out, dragging mud-soaked corpses from the depth souls she had fed on, now reanimated as her servants. 6 figures emerged, eyes white, hands dripping with slime. Their bones snapped as they walked, like puppets being controlled by an unseen puppeteer. "Thehai!" cried 2 from the edge. "She's sending them to the village." But Thehai had expected this. With a wave of his hand, he summoned a spirit ward, and from the circle rose 5 ghostly warriors, faceless but clad in ethereal armor made of prayer beads and ash. The spirits clashed corpse against guardian, mud against flame. But this was only distraction. The true battle was between Thehai and the Vuklin. Meanwhile, at the edge of the battlefield, Mr. Ben stood, shaking. He had offered his blood willingly. But he had not offered his confession. He had not told anyone the worst of it. The night Mai Tuyen died, she hadn't fallen by accident. He had held her head under the water for minutes until the bubbles stopped. He hadn't meant to, he told himself. But when she had looked at him, eyes vacant, hair tangled, voice mumbling strange names, he had felt nothing but rage. He had pushed her down and told her to go back to the spirits she loved so much. Now, those words echoed in his ears. And worse, she remembered them. The Vuklin turned her gaze on Ben. "He is mine," she growled. "His soul feeds my womb." Thehai's face darkened. "Then you'll have to go through me," she shrieked, and the river burst its banks. Water surged into the circle. The ghost warriors began to flicker, their forms destabilizing. The corpses laughed. One of them grabbed Uncle Kai, dragging him toward the water. 2 screamed and rushed forward only to be flung back by a tail of smoke. The villagers began to panic. Mothers clutched children. The old cried out prayers. And in the middle of it all, Thehai lifted his staff, struck it into the ground, and shouted, "I call upon the first fire." The ground shook. The circle blazed golden. From the heavens, a shaft of blue flame descended like a blade. It sliced through the water, evaporating the mud, turning corpses to dust mid-step. The Vooklin screeched, retreating, pieces of her form burning away. But she was not defeated. She reared up again, taller than ever. "You think fire can stop grief?" she hissed. "I am grief." And with that, she released a wave of pure sorrow, a psychic scream that knocked every conscious soul to the ground. Visions flooded their minds. Koi saw his mother's final moments begging for air. Trong saw Dung's last thoughts: betrayal, fear, confusion. Tu saw himself standing alone, unable to help anyone. Even Thay Hai staggered. And in that moment of weakness, the Vooklin lunged. Her jaws stretched open, revealing hundreds of tiny teeth, not human teeth, but the fangs of the drowned unborn, the nameless children pulled into her nest. She wrapped herself around the exorcist and began to squeeze. But Thay Hai smiled. "That's what I needed, girl." With one last breath, he whispered a sealing prayer, ancient and forbidden. "From ash he rose, to ash he return, but may you carry peace, this time." From his robes, he pulled a locket, small, silver, engraved with a flower. It had once belonged to Mai Duyen, a gift from her mother. He pressed it into her chest. For the first time, the Vooklin hesitated. She looked down at the locket. Her form flickered. One by one, the faces on her body began to vanish. Dung smiled. Koa closed his eyes. The unborn child laughed like wind chimes. And Mai Duyen, the spirit at the center of it all, wept. "I never wanted this. I just wanted to be loved." Her voice cracked. And then, slowly, the Vooklin unraveled her body, becoming mist, the mist becoming light, the light rising into the stars. Silence fell. At dawn, the river was calm again. Thay Hai stood alone, bleeding from the mouth. "She's gone," he said. "But the pain she carried, remains." Ben stepped forward, tears running like rivers down his face. He knelt before the old man. "I want to confess. I want to pay." Thay Hai placed a hand on his head. "Then live. And carry her story well." A week later, the funerals were held. Candles floated down the river. The village of Thatchuyen was quiet once more. But at night, sometimes, villagers say they hear the river sing, not in sorrow, but in peace. And in the mist, the faint outline of a woman can be seen, smiling. Weeks passed since the battle at the Tamlin River. The water no longer whispered at night. The villagers began to smile again. Children played near the banks once more, though none dared to dive into the water just yet. But peace is a mask thin, fragile, and easily cracked. Because beneath the ashes of the booklin, something else stirred. Something older. One evening, two visited Thay, who had taken residence in the abandoned watchtower on the eastern hill. The old man rarely spoke these days. He often stared into the treetops as if listening to something beyond the wind. "Master," two said softly, "was that the end?" Thay didn't answer immediately. His fingers were tracing a sigil into the dust on the floor. It was a symbol no villager had ever seen before. "No," he finally whispered. "She was only a spirit born of sorrow. But there are things in this land, born of rage." He paused. "Have you heard of the Makmu shrine?" Tu shook his head. "Of course you haven't," Thay muttered. "It was erased." "By who?" "By the ancestors of this village." And then, the old man began to tell the story. 120 years ago, Thatchuyen was part of a larger district called Long Enam, ruled by landlords and sorcerers who practiced blood rituals beneath ancient banyan trees. One such site was the Makmu shrine, a temple built not to worship gods, but to bind a primordial entity known only as that Le, the one of seven weeps. They didn't worship it, Thay explained. They feared it. Feared what it remembered. Feared what it could make you forget. The entity was sealed by a group of 7 spiritual guardians who sacrificed their own identities, erasing their names from every scroll and record. But their lineages remained. Some of them, Thay whispered, still live in this village. Unknowing descendants of the very people who caged a god. And now, that god wants out. The signs began subtly. Dreams of twisted forests, where trees bled amber sap that cried like children. Mouthless birds perched outside homes, pecking at windows with unnatural rhythm. And in the fields, crops began to wilt in circular patterns, as if scorched from below. One night, Tu's younger cousin Lin wandered into the woods. She returned at dawn, barefoot, shaking, her hands pressed over her ears. "He's humming," she whispered. "He hums when he forgets his name." She never spoke again. Uncle Kai, sensing the shift, gathered the elders. "There is something wrong," he said. "Even the dogs won't bark anymore." The village medium, old Mistress Doan, agreed. She threw sacred rice across her threshold and watched it turn black before it hit the ground. "There's a curse waking," she warned. "One that predates our stories." The villagers turned to Thay once more. But he was already preparing. He gathered 2, Koi, Trong, and 2 others he had chosen after secret rituals, each marked by a faint glowing thread of fate in their souls. He called them the That Tu Han, the 7 who must walk. "We must journey to the place they buried in silence," he said. and face what their silence left behind. The journey to Makmu took them 3 nights. Through jungle vines that twisted like veins. Through ancient stones carved with forgotten words. They finally reached it beneath a collapsed cliff, hidden by layers of roots and time. There was no shrine left. Only a pit. A circle of stone teeth, humming with energy. And above it, a dead tree. Charred black. Yet no lightning had struck it. As they approached, the wind changed. They heard footsteps behind them. But no one was there. Then, the humming began. Low. Gentle. And terribly familiar. "2, Koi said, that's your cousin's voice." "No, it's not." They turned. A figure stood behind them, wearing Lin's skin like a shawl. Her face was empty. Just skin stretched over nothing. It smiled. Then it opened its chest, revealing a hollow cage where a single white feather floated, spinning. Mist poured out. Thai slammed his staff down. "Back, shade of the godless." The figure didn't move. It whispered. "One has wept. 6 remain." And then it was gone. They stood in silence, the shrine pulsing beneath their feet. "What was that?" Trong asked, shaking. "A fragment," Thai said. "Of that Le. And if one fragment can walk, then the seal is breaking. How do we stop it?" 2 whispered. "We don't," Thai replied. "We remember what was forgotten. And we bleed what must be bled." That night, 2 dreamed of the Makmua. But in the dream, it wasn't broken. It was beautiful. Towering. Carved in ivory. 7 pillars stood around it, each bearing a name in a script not of this world. 1 pillar was broken. His name was on it. And the tree was no longer dead. It spoke. "You are the seed, child of the drowned. You are the keeper of the 6th cry. When the 7th wails, the world will forget the sky." 2 awoke screaming. His palms were bleeding. The mark of the 6th pillar was etched into his skin. 2 didn't sleep for 3 nights after the dream. Every time he closed his eyes, he returned to the shrine, only now it wasn't a ruin. It was alive. The 7 pillars stood in perfect formation, humming softly. And always, always, the dead tree in the center would speak in voices that sounded like everyone 2 had ever loved, speaking in reverse. The mark on his palm, once red, had now turned silver, and it pulsed when the moon rose. He kept it hidden from the others. But Thai already knew. "The 6th cry is stirring in your blood," the old master said one dawn. "It chose you. You cannot undo that." What does it want from me? To remember, to suffer, to choose. Tu didn't know what that meant, but he would soon. That day, the skies over Thatchuyen changed. Thick ash-colored clouds rolled in not from weather, but from memory. Birds flew in circles, disoriented. Children began coughing as if choking on dust only they could see. And then came the dreams. Again. But now, shared. The entire village dreamed of the same forest, where men with no eyes sat beneath bleeding trees, carving names into their skin with bamboo needles. We forgot, they chanted. So we must wear the memory. The villagers awoke with names on their skin, names they didn't recognize. One woman found her back carved with letters that weren't in any human language. Another man had his infant son's name etched onto his thigh, yet he had no children. The shrine was no longer dormant. Meanwhile, deep within the ruins of Mokmua, Thai performed a forbidden rite. He called upon the Tang on the Shadow Archive, a spirit realm hidden beneath the roots of the shrine. It was said to hold every memory erased from history. He descended alone, beneath the shrine's altar, lighting no fire. Only a single strand of bone-white thread guided his path. What he found there shook even him. Dozens of souls, tied to stakes made of truth. Each one whispered what the world had tried to forget. And in the center, a single child spirit sat cross-legged, crying without eyes. When it heard Thai approach, it spoke. The cries are not to summon us. They are to warn you. Warn us of what? That forgetting is what gives the god its shape. If you forget again, it will be born whole. Back on the surface, Tu began seeing things. Flashes of lives not his own. A girl sacrificing her tongue on the altar of a banyan tree. A man burning the name of his wife so she'd never be remembered. A child offering her own shadow in exchange for rain during a century-old drought. Each time, Tu would wake, gasping, fingers bloody, eyes flooded with black tears. These are past bearers of the cries, Thai said grimly. And their memories now live in you. Why me? Tu shouted. I didn't ask for this. Because you remembered. When others forgot, you listened. But the sixth cry was not just memory. It was choice. And that choice was coming. That night, the wind howled through the village. The shrine trembled. And the seventh cry began to awaken. The seventh pillar, the one shattered in every vision, began to pulse faintly beneath the roots of the dead tree. The seal, broken for the first time in over a century, released a name into the air. Not spoken, but felt. Every soul in Thatchuyen suddenly knew it. That Le. And something answered. A presence moved through the trees, massive, dragging silence behind it. Dogs whimpered. Chickens threw themselves against their cages. Babies cried not in fear, but in recognition. It passed through the heart of the village and left not footprints, but empty shoes. At the edge of the jungle, two met it. Or rather it met him. A boy, no older than 10, dressed in funeral whites, with no eyes and a voice made of thunder wrapped in whispers. "You have heard the sixth cry," the boy said. "But you have not yet screamed. What are you?" "I am the memory of what your people did. And I am the choice they refused. You can silence me again. Or, you can listen." Two didn't answer. He was shaking. But not from fear. From understanding. The sixth cry wasn't a curse. It was a burden. To remember what no one else could carry. Back at the shrine, Thai emerged from the Tang-an, with tears on his face. He had seen it. He had remembered it. He had witnessed the original sealing. 7 guardians each offering a part of their soul to bind that Le. But one had betrayed them. Not to free the god, but to steal part of its power. That bloodline lived on. And Thai had seen the mark. On two. In the final scene of that night, two stood on the roof of his home, the wind roaring around him. From the horizon, a shape approached not of this world. The real form of that Le, beginning to manifest. It would take one last scream to fully awaken. One final cry. But it needed a voice. Two's voice. And as the clouds cracked open and stars began to vanish from the sky, Two opened his mouth. Two stood atop the roof, the sky tearing open above him. The stars were disappearing, not fading, but being eaten, swallowed by something massive, invisible, yet present in every shadow that touched the village. His mouth opened involuntarily. His throat clenched. The sixth cry demanded to be released. But deep inside, Two heard another voice. Not the gods. Not Thai's. Not his own. It was Lin's voice. His cousin, the girl who had wandered into the woods and returned mute. Don't scream, Two, it whispered gently. Screaming is surrender. What do I do? Two asked inside his mind. You must remember. Suddenly, Two's body was no longer his. He was pulled backward, as if time itself collapsed. He was standing in the past, barefoot, in the middle of the shrine. But now it was whole alive, covered in glowing runes, with the 7 pillars standing unbroken. The dead tree was blooming with crimson blossoms. Around him, the 7 guardians stood in a circle. And then he saw himself. Not as Two, but as the 6th guardian, a woman, tall, with storm-colored eyes and the same silver mark on her palm. You chose silence, said the 1st guardian. Now your descendant must choose voice. What am I? 2 asked. A vessel, said the 6th. A curse. A key. You must either scream, and free that LE. Or you must bind it again. With your blood. 2 staggered. He didn't understand. I don't want to die. Then don't, said the 6th. But if you choose silence again, the god will not wait. It will take another. Your friend. Your family. Your village. He awoke, gasping. Thai was standing at the base of the house, wind ripping his robe. 2. He shouted. Don't let the 7th cry through. You're the last seal. The clouds above swirled into a vortex. A shape descended. It had no form, and yet, every villager saw something different. Some saw the mother they lost. Others saw the child they never got to raise. Ben saw Mai Duyen, covered in river moss, her face weeping blood. Thai saw his first master, eyes gouged out, reaching toward him. 2 saw his own face old, scarred, smiling with madness. It spoke in his voice. You are what I was, and what I will become. You are my next skin. The entity now stood at the edge of reality, 1 foot in, 1 foot out. It was waiting for 2 to scream. Just 1 cry. 1 surrender. But 2 did something no bearer of the 6th cry had ever done. He stepped forward. He spoke. I am not your vessel, he said. I am not your scream. And with that, he bit into his own palm, letting his blood drip down onto the mark. The silver glip flared. The sky roared. But the cry did not escape. Instead, it folded inward. And from 2's body emerged 6 shadows, the past guardians, summoned by memory, standing now as spirits of the seal. Each held a different weapon, a bamboo flute, a broken mask, a dagger made of bone, a scroll, a braid of hair, and a candle lit with green fire. Thai dropped to his knees, eyes wide. You remembered the full rite. 2 nodded. Let's finish what they began. Together, they formed the circle of 7. Thai took his place as the final point, offering his life force willingly. I am not of the line, he said, but I've walked its shadow long enough. As they chanted, the ground cracked open, revealing the heart of the god, a pulsating core of black light surrounded by chains of glowing script. The god shrieked. The air shattered. Mountains in the distance cracked. But the circle held. Then, 2 spoke the final line. Let memory be burden, and silence be choice. Let the cry fall on no ears. And the god rest, in forgetting. With one last breath, he stabbed his silver-marked palm into the ground. The blood met the runes, and the sky imploded. The silence that followed lasted hours. When the villagers awoke, the sky was clear. The shrine was gone as if it had never been there. And too was alive, but changed. His eyes were silver now. His heartbeat echoed like bells. He remembered everything. Every scream never screamed. Every name erased. And he knew he would carry it forever. Thai passed away peacefully that night, sitting beneath the banyan tree, his staff cradled in his arms like a sleeping child. The villagers buried him beside the river, under a stone with no name. Let his silence speak for us, they said. Two remained in Thatchuyen. He rebuilt the shrine not to seal, but to honor. A place where forgotten names could be remembered again. A place where crying wasn't shame, but release. And every full moon, the villagers gather, holding candles, and whispering names they dare not forget. Because memory is a blade, and forgetting is the god that waits behind the veil. The god they now call that Le. After the meaningful full moon festival in Thatchuyen, Tu felt a new energy in his soul. The road ahead was no longer the simple life of a country boy. He had become the guardian of the South, the guardian of memories, souls, and the balance between the human world and the invisible world. On the very first night, when everyone was asleep, Tu received a strange invitation through his dream. A door of light opened before him, revealing a world both familiar and strange, the spirit kingdom where unliberated souls reside, broken memories are retained, and unconfronted darkness still lurks. In the darkness, Tu stepped through the door, feeling every breath of this invisible space, where every sound reverberated like the echo of 1,000 years of forgotten history. Here, he met Ngulinsu, a god of intermediary, graceful as the wind, eyes filled with wisdom but also endless sadness. Ngulinsu said to Tu, "You are the one who bears the mark of the 7 tears, and you are also the one who can heal the wounds of history. But that path is not easy. There are ghosts of the past that still haunt you, and fates that have not yet been decided. If you are not strong enough, you will be trapped in this world forever." On his journey through the layers of the spirit world, Tu must face forgotten ghosts, souls that have been forgotten by humans, who were once friends, relatives, or even enemies. They carry invisible pain and resentment, always trying to cling to the living to prolong their existence. The illusionary realm, a realm where memories are distorted, where every step can be a psychological trap. There, Tu faces himself, unforgiven mistakes, deep fears, and unfulfilled promises. Bloodline challenge: to maintain balance, Tu must integrate and control the 7 tears bloodline energy in his body. But that energy is not only a power, but also the greatest danger. It can destroy him if he does not know how to control it. However, there are not only challenges but also allies. Tu meets kind souls, including Huyen Nhi, a spirit girl who was once an ancient healer, always looking for ways to help lost souls. Mendeo, a spirit warrior, the gatekeeper of the spirit realm, guides two in the use of ancient magic to suppress dangerous ghosts. Old sorcerer, a man who was once Dehai's teacher, appearing through memory fragments to impart valuable wisdom and advice. Every day in the spirit world, Tu learns more about how to communicate, neutralize, and balance different energies. He also begins to understand why that Le is not just a ghostly entity, but also a symbol of historical wounds of humans, of his clan, and of himself. And most importantly, that each person in the village, each of their stories, is an indispensable piece to keep the boundaries between worlds from collapsing. Meanwhile, in the real world, Thatchuyen village is still facing new dangers. After the destruction of Mokmup, strange phenomena continue to occur. Trees change strangely, branches and leaves grow into the shape of a crying human face. Children begin to speak ancient languages that no one understands. A strange dark shadow appears at night, watching each house. Tu knows he must return. But he also knew that the journey to protect everyone would be long, and every step in the darkness would be a great battle. I am not only the keeper of memories, he thought. I am also the torch that guides lost souls, and the barrier that protects the whole village from eternal oblivion. After the sacred full moon ceremony in Thatchuyen, Tu felt a transformation stirring within his soul. His life as a simple village boy had ended. He had become the Namjoy Thursday Ho, the guardian of memories, the protector of souls, and the balance between the human realm and the unseen spirit world. That very night, as the village lay in peaceful slumber, Tu was summoned by a mysterious call in his dreams. Before him, a radiant door of shimmering light slowly opened, revealing a realm both familiar and alien, the spirit kingdom. It was a place where restless souls dwelled, souls not yet freed, shattered memories held captive, and dark secrets lurking in shadow. Stepping through, Tu felt the breath of this ethereal dimension, an echo of 1,000 years of forgotten history, each sound reverberating like a chant lost in time. Within this realm, he encountered the soul envoy, a being of wind and wisdom, graceful and somber, whose eyes held the weight of infinite knowledge and sorrow. The envoy spoke solemnly. You bear the mark of that Le, and with it, the power to heal the wounds of history. But beware, the path is fraught with lingering phantoms of the past and unsettled destinies. Fail to tread wisely, and you shall remain trapped here forever. As Tu journeyed through the layers of the spirit realm, he faced harrowing trials. The forgotten phantoms, spirits erased from memory, once friends, kin, or foes, harboring invisible wounds and grievances. They claw desperately to latch onto the living, prolonging their existence through torment. The dreamscape, a twisted plane where memories distort into traps. Here, Tu confronted his own fears, unforgiven faults, and broken promises. The bloodline trial, to preserve balance, Tu must embrace and master that Le bloodline's energy coursing within him, a power potent yet perilous, capable of shattering his being if left unchecked. Yet, he was not alone. Among the spirits, Tu found allies. Huyen Nhi, a benevolent spirit child, once a healer, who sought to aid lost souls and guide them toward peace. Mendeo, a warrior spirit guarding the gates of the spirit kingdom, mentoring two in ancient magics to suppress the most malevolent phantoms. The old sage, once Thehai's master, appearing in memories to impart wisdom and vital guidance. Each day in the spirit kingdom, two learned to communicate, to pacify, and to balance the swirling energies. He understood more deeply that Le was not merely a malevolent entity, but a symbol of wounds of humanity, lineage, and his own soul. That every villager's story was a thread in the fragile veil separating worlds. Meanwhile, back in Thatchuyen, ominous signs multiplied. The forest bent unnaturally, its branches forming sorrowful faces. Children uttered ancient tongues no one recognized. A shadowy figure stalked the village nights, watching silently from the darkness. Tu knew he must return. Yet he also realized his path was just beginning. I am not just the keeper of memories, he vowed. I am the flame that guides lost souls, and the shield that protects this village from eternal forgetfulness. The morning sun barely pierced the thick canopy of the truckland forest as Tu made his way back from the spirit kingdom. The village lay peaceful, but the air carried a weight that no one spoke aloud. Before he could return home, an unexpected figure awaited him at the edge of the bamboo grove. Thehai's old friend, Lao Fapsu. With eyes sharp as obsidian and a face weathered by decades of hidden battles, Lao Fapsu beckoned Tu to follow him into the forest's depths. Inside a hidden cave covered by ancient vines and runes, Lao Fapsu revealed a trove of forgotten scrolls and relics, evidence of a centuries-old conspiracy. He explained. Thehai's lineage was not always just guardians. They were once part of a secret sect, keepers of forbidden knowledge and wielders of powers that could command gods and spirits. But power breeds fear, and fear breeds betrayal. The scrolls told of a betrayal that had shattered the original 7 guardians, one who had sought to seize that LES power for himself, fracturing the seal and dooming future generations. As Tu absorbed these revelations, Lao Fapsu handed him an ancient amulet. This will protect you from the god's true form, he warned. But beware, for that LES influence can twist even the purest souls. Suddenly, the ground trembled. The cave walls cracked, and shadowy tendrils snaked through the cracks. Outside, in Thatchuyen, villagers felt an unseen storm brewing. Crops wilted further, and a dark mist rose from the river, curling into shapes reminiscent of the lost guardians. In the days that followed, strange events intensified. Lin, the mute cousin, began speaking in riddles, her eyes glowing faintly with an otherworldly light. Villagers reported sightings of a shadowy figure drifting silently near the riverbank, a spectral echo of the fallen guardian. Even Ben's sons experienced nightmares where their father's face morphed into a grotesque mask, warning them of impending doom. Tu knew time was running out. With Lao Fapsu's guidance and Thehai's teachings echoing in his heart, he prepared for the ultimate confrontation, a ritual that would either seal that Le forever or unleash its wrath upon the world. The fate of Thatchuyen, and perhaps all realms of spirit and man, hinged on this moment. The sky over Thatchuyen was an angry canvas, crimson clouds swirling like blood spilled across the horizon. The river, once gentle and life-giving, churned wildly, spewing blackened foam and snapping branches like giant jaws. Tu stood on the cracked stone altar of the Mokmu site, clutching the ancient amulet gifted by Lao Fapsug. His silver-marked palm burned, a searing reminder of the burden he bore the sixth cry. Behind him, the village's few remaining guardians formed a circle of silent resolve. Among them were Koi, Trong, and even Ben, whose haunted eyes now glistened with fierce determination. Suddenly, a chilling wind swept through the gathering, carrying with it 1,000 whispered names, lost souls crying out for justice, vengeance, and peace. From the river's depths, a towering shadow emerged. It was that Le, no longer a mere spirit but a colossal entity woven from sorrow, rage, and forgotten memories. Her form shifted seamlessly between the beautiful and the horrific, a woman with flowing black hair streaked in red, eyes glowing like molten embers, and a body that rippled like dark water. Her voice thundered, echoing through the valley. You dare bind me again, child of the sixth cry. I am the scream of forgotten souls. The hunger of the unremembered. I will drown your world in oblivion. Tu stepped forward, steadying his trembling hands. He whispered an ancient incantation taught by Thay Hai and Lao Fapsug. The amulet around his neck blazed with blue light. I am not your vessel, that Le. I am the guardian of memories, the flame against your darkness. With that, he plunged his palm into the earth. The silver glyph erupted, sending shock waves that tore through the ground. The battle began. Waves of dark water surged toward the circle, seeking to drown and consume. Tu, wielding the amulet's power, conjured walls of radiant energy, shielding his allies. Koi and Trong chanted protective spells, their voices weaving a tapestry of light that shimmered against the oncoming darkness. But that Le was relentless. She unleashed torrents of sorrow visions that clawed at their hearts. Koi saw his mother's final breath, trapped beneath cold waters. Trong was haunted by the memory of his father's silence in the face of grief. Even Ben confronted the shadow of his guilt, his failure to protect Mai Tuyen, the torment he inflicted, the curse he carried. Tu, however, found strength in these visions. He embraced the pain, turning each sorrow into fuel for his resolve. At the battle's climax, that Le descended upon Tu, tendrils of shadow wrapping around him, pulling him toward the abyss. But Tu's voice rang clear. I remember you, Mai Tuyen. I remember your pain and your love. But I will not let your sorrow consume us all. He summoned the spirit guardians, the echoes of the original seven. Together, they channeled the pure essence of memory and hope. A blinding light engulfed the battlefield. The river stilled. The shadows screamed, then dissolved into shimmering motes of light. That LES form fragmented, her eyes filled with tears of release. I am freed, she whispered. Thank you. With that, she vanished, her essence scattered like petals on the wind. The village was saved. But the cost was great. Thay Hai had sacrificed himself to empower Tu, his last breath of blessing and a farewell. Ben, finally absolved, vowed to rebuild his life honoring Mai Tuyen's memory. Tu, now fully the guardian, stood watch over Thatchuyen, knowing the balance between worlds was fragile and eternal. As dawn broke, the villagers gathered to honor the fallen. Candles floated down the river, carrying prayers of remembrance and hope. Two looked toward the rising sun, heart heavy but unyielding. He knew this was not the end. It was the beginning of a new chapter, one where memory, love, and courage would forever guard the line between light and shadow. The battle with that Le had ended, but peace was fragile. 2, now fully embraced as the guardian, found himself caught between two worlds, his heart tied to the villagers, and his spirit forever bound to the unseen realm of memories. Life in Thatchuyen slowly returned to normal, but strange things persisted. At night, faint whispers floated on the breeze, telling stories of forgotten ancestors. Children spoke to unseen friends, repeating ancient names. The river, though calm, seemed to pulse with a quiet energy. Two often wandered the edges of the village, sensing shadows that were not quite gone. One evening, he met Huang, a young woman new to the village, with eyes that seemed to see beyond the ordinary. She claimed to be a seeker of lost souls, drawn by the disturbance in Thatchuyen. Together, they discovered signs of a new darkness rising. Symbols carved into ancient trees, remnants of rituals long forgotten. A rising cult, intent on awakening forces older and darker than that Le. Two's training with Thay Hai and Lao Fapsu became more urgent. He delved into forbidden texts, learning to weave magic that could protect not only the village but the entire region. Meanwhile, the villagers grappled with fear and hope. They honored the past, but worried for the future. Two stood as their beacon, ready to face whatever shadows would come. And in the deepest forests, unseen eyes watched. Years had passed since the last battle at Mokmuok. Thatchuyen had changed. The scars of the past still lingered in the eyes of its people, but their hearts were stronger. 2, now a man shaped by memory and sacrifice, carried the mantle of guardian with quiet dignity. The village had become a sanctuary not only for the living but for the restless spirits. The shrine to rebuild was a place where ancestors were honored, and forgotten souls found peace. Yet, Two knew the balance was delicate. The line between worlds was a thread stretched thin. At times, the wind would carry a whisper, a warning that the shadows never truly disappeared, they only waited. In his solitude, Two often wandered to the riverbank where Mai Tuyen had once been lost. He whispered prayers, not just for the dead, but for the living. For forgiveness. For healing. One night, under the silver glow of the full moon, Two felt a presence behind him. He turned to see a figure faint, shimmering. It was Mai Tuyen. Her face was peaceful, no longer twisted by pain or rage. She smiled softly. "Thank you," she whispered. "For remembering." Two nodded, tears shining in his eyes. "Your story is part of ours. Forever." And with that, she faded into the light, leaving behind a calmness that settled over the river. The villagers awoke the next day to find the river clearer than ever, the air lighter. Children laughed without fear. The shadows had lifted. To remain the guardian silent, vigilant, and eternal. A bridge between past and present. Between the living and the forgotten. And so, the story of Thatchu Yen ends, for now. But memory is endless, and so is the watch. Title: The Curse of Thatchu Yen, the Guardian's Battle Against the River Spirit. Description: Dive into the haunting legend of Thatchu Yen, a remote Vietnamese village plagued by the vengeful spirit of Mai Du Yen and the ancient river demon That Le. Follow too, the reluctant guardian marked by the sixth cry, as he journeys through the spirit kingdom, confronts forgotten guardians, and battles supernatural forces threatening to engulf his home. This epic tale of memory, sacrifice, and redemption weaves folklore, mystery, and cosmic horror into a gripping saga of courage and fate. Will two succeed in sealing the curse, or will the river's darkness claim all? Watch and uncover the secrets lurking beneath the waters of Thatchu Yen.